until finally he caught up to me and threw me on the bed and started strangling me. And if you've ever seen someone lose their temper, they're like, this darkness goes over their eyes where it's like they're not there anymore. And I saw that in his eyes when he was strangling me. And all of a sudden, it's almost, thank goodness, it was like a light snapped on and he stopped what he was doing, because I started to like not fight back as much because I started to, lose consciousness. And he stepped back and I just curled up in a ball and just started crying.
Welcome to A Sister's Love, the podcast that helps women who are healing by having those deep conversations, giving practical advice and words of encouragement. Come on, let's talk about it.
Hello, my beautiful sisters. Welcome to another episode of A Sister's Love podcast. On today's episode, we'll be talking to Stephanie. Well, she'll be talking to us about how she went from an abusive marriage, feeling depressed, to finally finding and marrying her husband of her dreams. But before we get started, I want to introduce myself. My name is Rose Jones, and I am your host here at A Sister's Love podcast. And I am just a woman who is sharing her story with other women and hoping to inspire them to share theirs. I am a survivor of domestic violence. I am currently battling PTSD, and I am currently battling self-hate. But I am using this podcast to help other women heal and find a safe place. If you are looking for a safe place, then this is the right place for you. So if you would love to join our sisterhood, I would love for you to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications. And now let's get started with our guest, Stephanie. Stephanie, can you please introduce yourself to the listeners?
Sure. Well, first off, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be on this show. And I think that it's so important for us to talk about these really heavy topics. So, thanks again for letting me come and talk to your audience. My name is Stephanie McPhail. I am a professional coach. I specialize in toxic relationship recovery. I've also written 2 books called Being Loved Shouldn't Hurt. And I am a Reiki master, well, not Reiki master teacher, Reiki level 2, I should say. My husband's a Reiki master teacher. And I really love being able to help clients overcome the cycle of toxic relationships. We tend to work more with professional women, but we are open to working with all women who are ready to heal and finally take their life to the next level so they don't get stuck in another toxic relationship again.
That sounds awesome. Can you go into some of your backstory of what got you started in this field?
Sure. This is one of those things where, your origin story is hardly ever a nice and easy one. And I think if you get to a certain age, we've all had to deal with some kind of trauma. And I definitely was someone who didn't understand what a healthy relationship looked like. I had not experienced that as a child. But I really wanted to be in a relationship. So I really went out of my way to be, in fact, I was in a long-term relationship who ended up being abusive. I ended that relationship. And then I got into another relationship. And at that point, I was 28 years old and thought that, I had not had a healthy relationship at all at that point. And I kind of just thought, I'm getting older. I want to have kids. I might as well just settle down with this guy. He seemed good on paper, even though there was some glaring red flags that I should have paid attention to. But because I felt pressured and I felt like that's what I was supposed to do, I ignored them. And one of the things is that I actually wanted to get married on the beach. He wanted to show off and get married at Oheka Castle, which is a beautiful place in New York. And people, like celebrities, get married there. And so he made me feel bad that I didn't want to get married there. I thought it was like a little too much. But he fought for it. So we had family from all over the place come to our wedding day. It was absolutely gorgeous. And that night we went back to our honeymoon suite and he got the tub ready. And you have to imagine, I just want you to take a view a second of what this looked like. We were in this marbled bathroom, marbled from floor to ceiling, gorgeous, like way beyond anything I had seen before. It was just absolutely gorgeous. And I went to go put my foot in the tub and some water spilled onto the ground. marble. Like, so it's, everything's fine. He lost his mind that I got water on the ground. And I said, sweetheart, it's not a big deal. I bet water spills on the ground all the time. There was actually a, what do you call it? There was a place for the water to go. So I was like, okay. So he said, Stephanie, you never care about anything. You don't care. I know these people. You don't care about anything. And I said, sweetheart, let's not ruin the day. And with that was the absolutely wrong thing to say, because he chased me around the honeymoon suite for the next 4 hours, telling me that getting married was the worst thing that he ever did. He wanted to kill me. He wanted to throw me out the window. He threatened my life over and over again. I kept hiding in different rooms. Again, I'm naked because I was about to go into a bathtub. So all I'm thinking is I can't go anywhere because I can't get out of the room. I didn't want anyone to see me naked. So I, kept chasing me until finally he caught up to me and threw me on the bed and started strangling me. And if you've ever seen someone lose their temper, they're like, this darkness goes over their eyes where it's like they're not there anymore. And I saw that in his eyes when he was strangling me. And all of a sudden, it's almost, thank goodness, it was like a light snapped on and he stopped what he was doing, because I started to not fight back as much because I started to, lose consciousness. And he stepped back and I just curled up in a ball and just started crying. And then he came, and so the funny thing is, and so in my mind, I'm like, I can't be married to this man. I just married this man in front of all these people. We spent all this money, I had all these horrible thoughts in my mind and I was embarrassed. I was so embarrassed. I was so ashamed. And right away, he starts with the excuses. It's because I was stressed out. It's because it was a big day. I promise it'll never happen again. And so because I didn't want to tell the minister that we were like personal friends with, I didn't want to tell all my family they had wasted their money and time coming to this wedding, all of that fear that was inside of me, I said, okay, you know what? I'll try it. So within 3 months, he became abusive again. And I stayed for 5 years because I grew up in a religious family. Once you get married, you stayed married. And I had promised that in sickness and in health, I would stay married. So I stayed. I tried to get him to understand. I tried to make him see that he didn't need to treat me this way. And I would throw him out. I would let him back in. He promised me things would get better, and then it would happen again. And over those 5 years, I was strangled again. I was spit on. I was woken up in the middle of the night on important occasions so that I couldn't sleep. I was put down all the time. If we went out in public, he would quietly tell me to shut up because nobody wanted to hear me. And my self-esteem started to really go down, and I started to really lose myself. Luckily, 5 years later, I decided to get a divorce. I was working a second job and he sent me a message that said he had quit his job. I was the one supporting us completely. He was a waiter and he quit his job and he said, well, I got into a fight with my boss. I don't like his attitude, so I quit. And so narcissists have that happen a lot. And so I said, babes, please go back and get your job back. I really was hoping to get some money this month. And he said, just like typical blank, blank Stephanie, not to support her husband. And it was in text message. So I just remember staring at that and thinking, I'm not supporting my husband. I'm working a second job to pay bills and I've let you in. And like, I've done so much above and beyond to be supportive of you. And you still think that I'm not supportive. I called up a friend who had said, you could always stay at my place if you needed an escape. Called her up. I said, I need to come and stay at your place. She said, yes. And I was able to escape. So it was hard. It was really hard because of all the things that we tell ourselves of why we need to stay. And I finally was able to leave. And once I left, I had to really start the whole rediscovering myself and healing myself, which is why I got so passionate in helping others, because I really felt this moment where I said, wow, it's like a whole different world out there. Once I got away from this man who was so abusive and I was able to see the world in a different light, I thought, oh my gosh, other people have to know that this is possible. I want other women to know that they don't have to stay stuck like this, that they can do something no matter how long it's been, no matter what they've experienced, they can have a better life too. So that's the short version of why I'm so passionate.
I totally agree. That's like the biggest reason why I got into it too, because it's crazy that we're on this call right now, because my story is kind of similar. I was on the kitchen floor. I was literally on the kitchen floor getting strangled, and I started to slip away, and all I heard was my daughter's voice, like, "Mommy, don't give up." And at that moment, I, like, for some reason, I reached over and I grabbed the knife. It was in arm reach, and I started to, like, go after him, like stab him in the back, but he had this really big hoodie on, and the knife didn't penetrate. And he looked at me. He let me go. It's like, "You're trying to kill me." I said, "What?" Like, he, in his mind, he really felt like, "What are you doing? You're trying to kill me." I'm like, "Bruh." And he just got up and ran. Got up and ran out the back door like, "Oh, she's crazy. She's trying to kill me." Even though I was on the ground being strangled with my life was leaving my body. Like, in his mind, I was the one that was doing him wrong.
Because they don't want to admit it. They don't want to say that they're doing anything. I mean, even for me, when I was strangled the first time, I remember going to speak to someone from the domestic violence shelter, and I was trying to get an order of protection, and she's like, "Tell me all the things that have happened." So I start saying things, and she starts looking more and more like her jaw drops.
Yeah.
And then I tell her that I was strangled, and she was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, he could have killed you like so quickly." That's actually, I mean, now actually you can go to jail. That's a felony. But I wasn't even thinking, like, you go into like just survival mode, just like you had a knife, you had your daughter there. I mean, thank God, but not thank God at the same time. Like, terrible that she experienced that, but great that you had someone to, like, get you out of it. Because I think when you're in, like, it's happening to you, it's like, how is this happening to me? How am I in this position?
And you don't realize it, like, and it's like at some point, just like, I'm just gonna give up. Like, it's nothing I can do. It's nothing I can fight. I don't have to fight anymore. It's just, you just accept it. Like, you're just at a point like where I'm just gonna accept what it is and take it as it is. And then once you get that fight into you and you get out of that, you that is something better on the other side. Like, I fought back and I made it. Like, I would never go back to that. Like, I cannot go back to that. I refuse to go back to it. And that's like the reason why, like you said before, I have to hope other people see the light. Like, once I got this shine on me, like, I could not ever go back. And I just want other people to understand, like, there is another side of this. Like, even if you don't see it, and even though you don't understand it, because like you said, like, we grew up in households like this, so we don't actually know. A lot of people it's just like us. They don't know that it's another option. Their representation of love is toxic and unhealthy and domestic, and they don't know that it's another way to be loved, because their parents taught them to love. Like, yelling, hollering, hitting, abusive is a definition of love. It's not a healthy definition, but it is. That's how some people show love, because they don't know how to control themselves. They don't know, and they're hurt and they're angry.
To me, love. So when I wrote my first book, it's Being Loved Shouldn't Hurt. And that was, for me, one of the biggest things that I had to learn was what love actually felt like. Because just like what you said, my definition of love was stressful, anxiety, you got to fight for it, guilt, like all of those things were what love was. So when I experience those things in relationships, well, that this person loves me. I'm feeling all of those things that I'm reminded of, which is terrible. But the problem is that when we don't fix that part of us that believes love is that way, I always call it, we've got to change what home feels like. And home is inside of you. So if home feels all of those negative things, then we search out home in other relationships. The only way to fix it is to change what home feels like and make it so that is now peaceful, accepting, all of those positive words you can think of, just like we would for a best friend. Yeah. But a lot of us, we've allowed people in romantic relationships to treat us worse than we would ever allow a friend to treat us. But it's, again, when we know that, like, romantic love, that's what we see, then we subconsciously keep creating that for ourselves in romantic relationships.
Yeah, and another thing that I had learned about, like, domestic violence is that people think, like, oh, because I was in like 3 abusive relationships, and I used to think like I was 3 separate abusive relationships. And then I learned a lot of people don't know that there is just one really abusive relationship that you're repeating over and over and over again, because we have a tendency to try to fix things as human beings. And if we don't get it right, we keep putting ourselves in positions to fix it. You know what I'm saying? Subconsciously. And I think that's why a lot of people that's in like grew up in a household, like if I could fix this, I could fix my home. I could fix how I grew up. I could fix that source of pain, and then it'll get right. So they're subconsciously trying to fix something that happened to them as a child, because this is like, if I can feel love, if I can create a loving situation, then that child inside me will feel loved again. You know what I'm saying? Because I was neglected as a child. I seen domestic violence, I seen this and all this and over. So they constantly try to fix a relationship that they created with their parents or in the family atmosphere outside in romantic atmospheres. And that's like the saddest thing. So when people realize that they're like, when they can track back where the source is, they can subconsciously move forward better.
Yeah, we have to. I mean, I just remember being a teenager and having sex really early because I thought that that's what I needed to do to be loved. If the physical attention was important. And then, really never having a real relationship where I just never felt like I was wanted or needed, unless it was for sex. And then I started having relationships, but none of them were healthy. And I mean, it really all stemmed from my upbringing, but it stemmed from specifically my mom. My mom and how she is. She definitely has an undiagnosed mental illness. She would never, narcissistic 100%. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but I do work with a lot of people who've dealt with narcissism. Maybe some other, like probably borderline personality disorder, I would guess too. But she would never want to get help, because as soon as we would, like my little sister tried to kill herself, we tried family therapy and my mom refused to go. And we were like, it's kind of important for you to go to this.
Yes.
And she was like, no, because in the one session they went, basically it was really clear that it was my sister's issue was also with my mother. Everyone had the issue with my mom. And so when that it's mom, dad, it's lack thereof. Sometimes it's even, great parents. I've seen the opposite too, where people get into these toxic relationships because they had amazing, wonderful parents, but they never learned they never learned boundaries. Because they just trusted and accepted everything everybody said. So now they're in the real world. The real world is not, trusting and accepting of everything. Then we're naive.
That is true. I met people like that. She was like, I never had an abusive background. She and I got to where I said, because you walked into a place of the unknown, like you didn't walk into a realistic place. Like your parents didn't prepare you for what the world is and what it's becoming. Like domestic violence is at a high right now because it's becoming a normal thing, not a normal thing to talk about, but like a normal part of relationship. People are extra jealous now. Social media is making relationships worse. People have phones on them 24/7. So people are overly suspicious about things now. It's like, even with the kids, like I tell my daughter all the time, like, her boyfriend, like, oh, we need to be on the phone 24/7. No, you do not. Like you're creating a codependent relationship where you need to be independent but codependent in certain situations. Like you do not need to know each other whereabouts 24/7. Y'all don't need to be on the phone 24/7. Y'all don't need to track each other 24/7. You're creating insecurities, and that's not healthy. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's like when they don't know those things about each other, they get overwhelmed. Like, oh my God, what is he doing at this moment? Like creating anxiety in their self for no reason, because they're creating codependency based on what society said that they need to be doing, or things that they learned, or they're seeing their friends doing stuff like that. And I'm like, no, we cannot do that.
Yeah, the comparison on social media really makes it terrible, and to really be in everyone's business. But I was thinking about when you said that, if anybody's listening and they're, they feel like they need to check in on their significant other's phone and things like that. There is already, if you feel like you have to, then you already know the answer.
Exactly. I said all the time, I used to be a phone demon. So I had to tell myself, like, if I have something inside of me feeling like I have to search his phone, is either something that I have to deal with me, that I don't trust him because something wrong with me, or is something that he might be doing. Because sometimes it might not be the person. When you deal with trauma, it might be your own insecurity. So I had to tap in with myself. Like, is it me, or is it his behavior that's causing me to believe that? You know what I'm saying? Is his behavior suspicious, or is it my mind that's creating suspicious behavior? You know,
which is why you have to do the work beforehand, because if not, you're bringing baggage.
Yes.
So then you're bringing all this baggage into a new relationship. It's not the other person's fault that you experience whatever you experienced. They should have done the work before they got into another relationship. You should have done the work before you got into another relationship. So that way you can trust yourself. Someone who's been in an abusive relationship has a really hard time trusting themselves because they've been in a bad relationship. Yep. So they don't trust their own ability to make the right decisions for themselves. So now they don't trust anybody.
No, that's true. Because I went through a stage of non-trust and a lot of control. Because of the lack of trust, I became overly controlling. And I'm like, if I can't trust you, I can control you. If I can't, I have to control the situation so that I can feel comfortable in the situation, which was not cool. Like, it wasn't cool. Like, they're like, people call me like, you're very intimidating. I'm like, I think I come off of a loving person, but when I'm insecure or lack of trust, I become very dominant over the situation. And I'm like, I have to feel, it's just come to a place like we all want safety. So for me to feel safe, I have to control it, and I have to know what's going on at all times. But I moved past that now. But before, it was bad.
Yeah. Bad. Yeah. But it even like, so I think back to my ex, and my ex would call me, like, if I left the house to go with a girlfriend, like just to go to their house. I'm not saying go to the club, even go out to a restaurant, just literally go to a friend's house. If I didn't have my phone with me, I would be freaking out. If I forgot my phone in the car, I was at a friend's house one time and I forgot my phone in the car, and they were like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, I have to go back to my car. I can't be in here without my phone. And they're like, "Why? What's the matter?" Well, I go get my phone. I had 30 text messages and like 10 missed calls. I hadn't even been gone that long. But if I didn't, and so I would be out with a friend, and I had to just sit there with like my phone next to me face up, so that if I saw a message from him come in, I'd have to immediately respond. Because if I didn't, he'd be like, "So what are you doing? Who are you with? Who are you having sex with right now? What's going on? I'm going to go to their house. I have you pinged. I'm going to follow where you are." Like, and then I would start to feel myself get nervous and anxious. But, that's one of the things. If someone does that to us, we know what that feels like. Yeah. We don't want to do that to somebody else. That's
exactly.
Terrible.
Yeah. But I feel in my situation, I kind of went from being abused to kind of being the abuser, not on purpose, but in the protection mode. Like, I was kind of unaware of it. Like, I thought I was protecting myself, where I was now mentally or emotionally abusing someone else based on what I've been through, thinking it was a safety thing, where I was actually turning the table. So now I'm on the other side of the spectrum, where it wasn't, and that's when I had to come back. And that's when I started doing my self-work and my healing process, where I started to be aware of what people were saying to me. And mostly it was my kids was like, "Mom, like, can we breathe? Like, can we have a breath? Like, you're hovering us like so much," like that they didn't trust me. Like, I tried to get the trust and I tried to protect them. I thought what I was doing right, but it was giving out the opposite effect. And when I seen that everything I was doing was not getting the results that I wanted, I had to realize, okay, it's time to go back to the drawing board. Like, tap in. It's time to tap in with yourself. And I did a lot of like self-awareness and self-evaluation, self-reflection, and started to realize, like, you're moving from a place of fear, not love. So if you want love, you have to move from a place of love. You have to go back and reevaluate what your behaviors and how you're talking and how you're communicating with people.
But there's a lot of anger.
Yeah.
Like when you end that, it's like, oh my gosh, someone would do that to me. Like, I think there's so much anger that goes along with it. But I think also too, especially, and I'm learning this with kids in a healthy relationship. There are things that follow you that all of a sudden pop out, from your own upbringing.
Yeah.
So, even, and I mean, and I've done the work, and I would say, like, I think there's always room for healing, and, that's a whole other conversation. There's always room for growth, because we are, as long as we're alive, we're growing, or at least we should be. And I think sometimes, having kids, it almost kind of shine the light in the areas where you still need growth, where you still, like, so for me, sometimes it's patience. Like, I think I have pretty good patience until my 4-year-old, like, she cut her hair yesterday, or no, 2 days ago, like 6 inches off her hair, cut off all her beautiful curls. And I was like, oh my God, patience. Can't do this.
Breathe.
Yeah. She gave everyone a haircut. All of her dolls got haircuts, all of her My Little Ponies. She'd cut up a dress. But the worst thing really for me was her hair, because she has like these beautiful curls. And I was like, okay, try not to freak her out, but also make sure she understands. And I think that, I'll say to clients too, we might sometimes know we need to do better, but sometimes we don't know what that is.
Exactly.
Like, so what should I do differently? Like, I know that I shouldn't. And that's why it's so important to have a coach and to have someone to work with, a mentor, because it really, like, we can intellectually know in a toxic relationship, okay, I don't want to ever have that again. But what happens a lot of times is the pendulum swings in the other direction, just like what you're talking about, or we get so hyper vigilant about everything. Now we have a wall built, 12 inches thick, and we're not letting anybody into our fortress, but our fortress becomes a cage. And then we're wondering, why doesn't anyone want to talk to us? What's going on? And then that becomes another terrible place to be in. So to have someone that's on the outside that can say, hey, maybe just try the language a little bit differently. Just say this instead of what you were going to say. Or have you thought of this perspective? Just having somebody else to kind of soundboard with you is so helpful to get you out of your own thinking, because the thinking that got you here is not going to be the same thinking that gets you out. We're smart people. That's why we tried to figure out how to fix this person. That's why we stayed stuck in there for so long. It's not that we're not intelligent. It's that we didn't know what we needed to do. So that's what we need. We need those tools to be able to do something different.
That's true. I have a bouncing board. My sister, I call her. I'm like, yeah, it's time to vent. She's like, well, I'm like, yeah, this just happened. This happened. She's like, okay, you got 2 minutes to vent, and then we got 5 minutes to find a solution, because we're not going to sit in the place of just talking about the problem. We're going to go into the problem. So we always do, like, okay, I just need to release, and then we can find a solution. She's like, okay, release. I always do the release first, and then I go. Even if I have to cry and scream, she let me go. Do it for how long? Like 2 or 3 minutes. She don't let me stay in it. And then we go right into, like, trying to problem solve. Let's problem solve this. Let's problem solve. And that's, like, I think that is so needed. Like, having that person to bounce off, or somebody that further than you, like that been through, like this podcast, or like support groups, like people that been through it and knows what's going on, and they had overcome it. Like, I understand what you're going through. Like, it is another side of the spectrum, and this is how I did it. Maybe you could try this. And then if you got a lot of people in your circle, that method might not just work for you. It could be other methods. You know what I'm saying? Because everybody's journey and healing process is different.
And that's why, I mean, really, I think that's key right there. Whether it's working with me or with, the important thing is to work with someone. So what I find a lot of times too, is that our friendships, we might have good friendships, but they're not always the healthiest people in their relationship either. So we do have to be careful. Yeah. Because like,
that's why I said people that's actually in a better position, and you can see that they're moving forward in their life, because some people will give you bad advice, like, yeah, they deserve what you said and stuff like that, and some people are biased. You do want to get a non-biased person.
Or what about the person, this is like my favorite one that I hate, the phrase is, the best way to get over someone is to get under somebody else.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, no, you want a break. You want time in between the relationship.
Yeah, I say the same thing, like, do not do that. I used to argue, like, you do not listen to somebody. Oh, the only way to get over a relationship is to get in another relationship. No, only way to get over a relationship is to heal yourself and work on yourself before you get into the next relationship, for that relationship to be successful. Stop it. Don't do it. Like, run the other direction. Don't do that. No.
Having someone who's, like you said, I think that's one of the biggest things, is that, even when people come to us at times, and they've been in therapy sometimes. I had a client that she'd been in therapy for 25 years. She had a session with me. She's like, you connected all the dots that I didn't see. And I was like, 25 years?
No.
And I could, like, in an hour session? Like, what was missing?
The therapist, no, they don't listen. I go to therapy, and my counselor, like, it's pretty much like she tried to make me do like CBT, and she pretty much like, okay, go to worksheet, this and this and this. Let's talk about your emotions and stuff like that. And then I'll tell her something like I discovered in the worksheet, and she's like, oh, I'll just take note of that.
Well, but I think, and you're 100% right, but I think even adding it on top of it,
yeah,
I'm not sure a lot of those therapists have either been in a toxic relationship themselves,
that's true,
or if they have been able to create a healthy relationship. Because if you're looking to create healthy relationships and the therapist, it's just like having a friend giving you bad advice. If all they're doing is reading a book and saying, well, I learned this in college, and there's not actual, like, they've done it themselves, they're living that life, then they can't know what you're understanding because they can't feel it. Like when I work with clients and a client tells me why they're stuck, I get it. I know why they went back 10 times. I 100% understand. I can help you make a different choice, but I get it. I know the thinking that you're going through. I know what you're telling yourself right now. It's like that drug addict. Just one more time. I'm just going to try a little bit more, one more time, and then it's going to finally be okay this time. But once you get that little fix, you broke it off, you let them back in, whatever, you had great makeup sex or whatever you do when they come back. And it's just like the cycle keeps going and going, but you need to be able to have someone who's been there to say, no, I see what you're doing. We're going to go through withdrawals. We're going to get you to the next place so that we can actually help you to heal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because a lot of them just work from theory. Like, this is the theory of what I learned, and this is how it should happen, and not knowing, like, it's not just a theory. This is my life, and it's not that easy. It's not as easy because this is real life, and I'm going through real things. And as, like you said, like, as I'm going through theory, trying to work through my past, my life is happening right now, and there's more stuff piling on top of what's going on, and it's just not feeling good. Like, I got this stuff in this bag over here, and now I'm creating another bag of my present, and now they're all just mixing up, and it's just like, help me sort this out. Like, help me sort this out.
And that's one of the reasons why therapy doesn't work, is because especially if you're only able to see your therapist once a week, you know, like you said, you have real life going on, and you're unpacking your past. That's really overwhelming, which is why a lot of people don't even start the healing journey to begin with, because they're always so busy and so overwhelmed with life that they're like, I don't have the emotional bandwidth to go backwards. I don't have the ability to do that. But the problem is that until we do that part, we can't fully enjoy the new part. So we've got to take that time to say, you know what? It's gonna hurt for a little bit. I'm gonna cry for a little bit. It's gonna be uncomfortable for a little bit, but it's not forever. This too shall pass. This will not be always.
I tell myself that all the time, like, even like crying the other day, like, oh my God, this shall pass. This will pass. Oh, this is gonna pass. Because I refuse to go back to that darkness. Like, that's like my biggest motivation, because I already got a taste of the other side of this. Like, I don't want to go back to that. And I know if I don't keep doing the work, it's a possibility that I will go back. Because even though you say you won't go back, if your self-esteem get low enough and your self-worth get low enough and you don't think that much of yourself, you will slip back into those other behaviors, just like an addict. It's just love is like an addict. It's just like addiction. Anything, like, if you do not do the work, and it's like for me, the process is like an ongoing, just like, oh, I got this over this, and I just, it's done. No, for me, I think healing is like ongoing process. It's like an everyday effort that you put in place every day to make sure you're doing what you need to do to make sure you stay in the place that you want to go. You know what I'm saying? Or be.
Being aware of what we're thinking about is really important. So if we start to go down a hole or start to go into automatic, I mean, that's another thing too. I remember, so I had done the work, and I was, starting to date, but I was at a point where I was like, you know what? I don't really care. Like, I went from a point of like, I have to get married and have children, to I don't care if I'm single for the rest of my life. And I was really okay with that. And once I got really okay with it, that's when I found my husband, and we now have 2 beautiful children and all that beautiful stuff. But before that, all that good stuff got to happen, I started dating again. And one of the guys I went on a date with He was super sweet. He was a super nice guy. And we went on a date, and pretty quickly into the date, he tells me he's from Alabama. He comes from a farm family. Like his mom and dad both died before he was 12. Then his sister died, his brother died, another brother died. Like all of this death where there was like 4 or 5 kids in the family. I think he was the only one left out of his family.
Oh, wow.
And I remember sitting there. Yeah, it was awful. Like my heart was bleeding for him. And I'm listening to this poor guy, and he was, again, super sweet. And I'm thinking, I want to help him. And in that same moment, I said, I can never see him again, because I'm not there to help someone I'm in a relationship with. I'm there to be a partner with them. That feeling, that automatic feeling that I used to get when I would see potential in dating someone, it was, oh, I'm going to show them what love is. I'm going to show them and help them and let them see what I see in them, because I saw the potential and the possibility and all of that. We have to remember that we are in a relationship with someone now, not their future self, because they might not want to be that person. They might not do the work to become that person. You have to realize where they are now, and do they have ideas of where you want to go? I mean, if you're someone that you want to be successful and you want to do things, and all they want to do is sit on the couch and not go anywhere, I mean, that's cool. And I'm not judging that. But for me, it was like, I knew there was more for myself. Mm-hmm. So that wouldn't have been good for me. So like, when you start to realize who you are, what you need, you stop accepting, you're more aware of what you're doing, and you're able to stop things before you go down this path where all of a sudden you're like, oh, here I am again in another toxic relationship. We can see it. And they don't have to be raging red flags anymore. It's just, they're a good person. They're just not the right one for me. Next. I'm going to move on to the next person.
I love that, because I noticed that a lot of women that are in the healing process, that heal, they usually just settle. Like, well, he's like 80% better than what I ever had. Even though you don't have that love feeling that you want, or you don't have exactly everything that you want, you're like, I can settle for this. I could be here. But you know in your heart that this is not exactly what you want or what you deserve, but it's good enough because it's better than what you ever had. And we don't realize that
settling is awesome.
We can get what we deserve and what we want. We don't have to settle because we've been through some stuff. Doesn't mean that we have to settle for what was given to us. And that's a lot of people, they just settle like, well, I think this is the best I'm going to get.
And that's what I did with my first husband, who ended up being the worst of all my relationships I had ever had. I settled. I was like, this is the best I'm going to do. Because on paper, it seemed like at the time when we got married, it was like, oh, they're a power couple. They both are, doing all those great things, whatever. No, he wasn't any of those things. He was pretending. And then when we got married, it was like, oh, I don't have to pretend anymore. I'm not going to just do whatever I want. And, so I think it's really important for you to see, get really clear on what you want. And really, it's like when we start to trust ourselves and we start to see our lives in a way where we are the creator of the life that we want. And it's not natural necessarily. Sometimes we have to be reminded of that. But when we start to really live our life as the creators of our life, we realize I have the ability to create beautiful, wonderful things. And I have the ability to create a lot of stress and overwhelm. I know that there's going to be bad things that go on in life. I'm not oblivious to death and other, bad things going on in the world and all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to make sure that my home life, my fortress of solitude, my safe space is safe. So I can go in the world and deal with all the hard things and then come back to a place where I feel secure and safe. And if I don't feel that way, I have no problem ending that relationship. And you've got to be that ready, like that prepared. I mean, my husband, and we work together now, which is great. But he's like, I could never imagine speaking to you the way that your ex-husband spoke to you. He's like, he's never called me a name, like a curse. I've never been cursed at by my first husband. I was cursed at every single day, or I would get the silent treatment for weeks at a time. Sometimes my husband now is like, I can't imagine that you did that. I'm like, because I wouldn't now. Yeah. And he knows that, he doesn't need to be told that. He just knows that. Oh. But my first relationship, I didn't want to allow it, but the fact I stuck around allowed it. It gave him permission.
Yep, you enabled the behavior.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. That's another thing. Just like If you don't like something, stop it right away. And if that person doesn't stop it, you set your boundaries, and that person still overstep your boundaries, it's your job to walk away. You know what I'm saying? So that's exactly how it is. But is there any advice that you would like to give the listeners before we end the episode?
The biggest thing, I think, that if you get only one thing out of this, I think the most important thing is to remember, no matter how long you've been in a toxic relationship, no matter what you've experienced, no matter what you've seen, you can always decide today to make changes. It's possible for you to make the rest of your life the best of your life, but you have to be prepared to not just think about it, not just want it. You have to be prepared to take action and take away all other possibilities of failure. So like for me, that meant getting a therapist, getting a coach, surrounding myself with healthy people, traveling by myself, doing all the things I put myself to the side for so long, and just making that my deal. This is what I'm doing. I'm just worrying about myself and taking care of myself. Obviously you have kids, you take care of them too, but but you're focused on your healing. And so when you get that kind of clarity and say, I'm going to do whatever it is I have to do, then we make it happen. And then we take action, and then things start to change. But we have to be ready to do that. Even when it hurts, even when it's uncomfortable, it's possible to create the life that you want.
I agree. Making yourself a priority. You need to be a priority in every relationship, because if you are not taking care of self cannot take care of no one else.
100%.
Yes. Now, can you please tell the listeners how they can reach you and a little bit more about what you do and how they can get started with you if they want to start?
Sure. So we're actually a husband and wife team. My husband, David, does something called Psych-K, which is for high-speed mindset change. So those negative feelings that someone comes to us with of doubt, not feeling good enough about themselves, feeling like change is impossible, or that, it's just not possible for someone like them. He can help them through with a session. So it actually changes those negative beliefs into more positive ones. He's very much into I say more metaphysical. So it's Psych-K. He's a Reiki master teacher, all of that. And then myself, I really work with clients on a way from personal experience. So having known it, I have a double master's in health and education. I have a psychology degree. I have all these other things. And then of course, just, knowledge, firsthand experience. I bring all that together, and I'm able to help clients see what they're doing wrong, and then give them specifically the right tools and support in order for them to move forward. So it's a really great kind of yin and yang. I always kind of joke around. I'm more of my husband and I are both New Yorkers. I'm very much I say it how I see it. I don't mess around. I'm not wordy. I just say it. My husband's a little bit more he'll pet a little bit more, he's a little bit softer, which is great because it works differently with different clients also. But I think that yin and yang, the grounded one versus the spiritual one, definitely helps with clients. And I think it also helps with clients see a male in a more subdued light, like someone who's a good listener and who likes to talk and has big feelings and is more than happy to share what he's thinking. I think that's really helpful for people. So we do a group program called Brilliant Life Blueprint, which is our signature program. And so that's something that's a big thing. If you'd like to check out any of our services, I would recommend going to beinglovedshouldn'thurt.com. You can read all up about my husband and I. You can read about our services, really what our focus is in helping professional women heal from toxic relationship recovery is really what we specialize in. And we are on all the medias. Pretty much everything is Being Loved Shouldn't Hurt. So YouTube, Facebook, Instagram is all Being Loved Shouldn't Hurt. TikTok, I think, is Stephanie Mac 23. But all of those things can be found on our website. My book, all of that stuff can be found on my website. And really kind of special thing, this will be airing after the fact. But February 16th, I will actually be on the Morning Mix in Grand Rapids on their morning show, their local morning show, which is for Grand Rapids, which is a pretty big city. So I'm kind of excited. It's actually a Fox related show. So you can definitely check that out too. It's Fox 17 in Grand Rapids Morning Mix. So definitely go check us out on that too, which will probably be on our website by the time this airs.
Yes. And I also will have her information linked under the show notes, so that you guys can just click on it and get straight to her so you can book a session with her. Well, that's it for today's shows. I thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you guys next time. Well, that's it for this episode of A Sisters Love Podcast. But before we end, I want to invite you to our new support group. This group is exclusive for our podcast listeners. This is the perfect place for women to come together, share experiences, and ask questions, and get access to exclusive resources. So, if you are a woman who's looking for safety and want to tell her story in a safe place, then this is the right group for you. And this is a judge-free zone. So, you'll never have to worry about feeling unheard or alone. So, to get access to this group, all you have to do is join our mailing list by clicking the link below this video and join our mailing list, and then you will get access to our group. Well, that's it for this episode, and signing off, your sister through love, Rose. Bye-bye.